Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS. It's time for Owin's Field Report, sponsored by Les Schwab Tire Centers.
Welcome back, everyone. No, I am not that tall, but it's coming around. We'll get there. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Now, this week they had a meeting. They decided that they were going to go ahead and give us a little bit more time on the Columbia below Bonneville Dam. But along with that, they actually, for good reason, actually gave the folks on the east side of Oregon and Washington an opportunity as well, which they were basically not given at all in that previous extension that we got. So currently, as it stands, we're able to target spring Chinook below Bonneville up until the 12th of June. Now, all the standard regulations apply, deadlines, limits, all that stay the same, which a lot of people found interesting for a number of reasons. We may talk a little bit about that later on, but not bad fishing. I mean, not great by any means. I was only able to get out twice this week, Tuesday and Thursday, and Tuesday I had a pretty decent day. I had 3 opportunities, lost, finally landed one kind of thing, then got out and did some plunking on Thursday, which I love to do, which we've talked about ad nauseum here on the show over the last 17 some odd years. Love to go plunking. One of my favorite things in the whole world is to hear it, ding, ding, ding. If you know, you know, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, let's just jump to the photos. Same thing as the week prior, big spinner, right? Went out to a couple of spots that I really like to fish spinners specifically. Wasn't able to take advantage of that one particular day that I was out, and had to spend some time in an area that I would call just searching, right? All the likely areas that I wanted to drop my anchor, because it's been an anchor show out there, were packed. I mean, literally, I was actually kind of surprised, but I wanted to set up in an area that I could see, you know, really what was going on. 3 different spots that I really wanted to be at. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into any of them, but learned something. Sat in a spot that I would say is just a total dead zone. I've caught fish there in the past, but very rarely do you ever see somebody drop an anchor. The only reason why I did, and the reason why I'm saying this, is that you can find a lot of really distinctive areas where fish are going to travel through that not everybody is fishing. Now, I didn't actually land anything sitting in that dead zone little spot that I was sitting at, but I did have a couple of chances, and with some very high-end technology, was seeing fish. And it was driving me crazy enough to where I'm like, I'm not leaving until one of them are dumb enough to eat this giant spinner, okay? And I say giant, it's a size 6. That's a Yakima bait, half gold and chartreuse. Very, very old spinner that I've had for a very long time. But sometimes those big size 6 blades, with the amount of violence that they produce in the water, can entice a bite, and obviously it did work out on this particular one, although it did get bit 3 times. I'm not going to complain about barbless hooks, but I'm going to complain about barbless hooks, as you all know. But nice fish, not a horrible fish. It was probably, you know, that mid-teener-ish, somewhere in there. I don't weigh my fish, but at the very least, there was some success to be had out there in a number of different places, from plunking to folks that were trolling. Typically, right now, that game is in the lower river where the tide on the incoming has slowed it down enough where anchor fishing isn't an option. Where I'm spending my time, there's plenty of current, no matter what the tide's doing, to sit on the anchor, and that's been far more productive than trolling in that dead zone area. So kind of keep that in mind if you're going to head out there. But don't be afraid of trying to find some different places, because there's a lot of them. Everybody, it's herd mentality. Everybody wants to be where everybody else is, and I get it, but sometimes, although it didn't work out, I was really, really close. Really, really close. Anyway, let's take a look at the counts going over the over the falls. 358, that's actually the biggest number, I think, that's crossed over the falls yet. And that's all based on temperature. That's all based on water flow and really, of course, the time of year. We're starting to get to the end of, we are at the end of May. So we should start seeing those numbers start to ramp up, because things are warming as we speak on the Willamette and on the Columbia. But numbers at Bonneville, this is absolutely normal. If you look at the 10-year average, this is slightly above that, but at the very least, it is absolutely on track with 110,002. That's over Bonneville currently. Not horrible, not great, but for 2025, based on a handful of years going back, not bad. Hence the reason why we're going to have some time in June to target spring Chinook, and I don't want to talk about steelhead numbers. Just not yet. Anyway, and shad are starting to ramp up. Of course, Willamette, the level there, this is at the falls. You can see that it is forecasted to make it a slight bounce, probably because of the warmer weather that's coming, expecting some sort of melt-off. Taking a look at the Columbia, same thing, a little bit of a bounce coming. Now, you've all seen in the years past, even in the late May, early June, where the Columbia will literally just blow out, end up in the double digits, 10, 12, 13 feet. Doesn't look like that's going to happen this year, good and bad. But at the very least, it is stable. And if you are going to be playing that tide thing, trolling-wise in the lower parts of the river, you know, obviously you're going to want to be on the anchor when it's outgoing and on the incoming, because it is changing that current flow to start trolling. Although it just seems like it's been way more productive on the anchor than trolling, at least as of now in the Columbia. On the Willamette, different story. It's a trolling game, although there is a little more current out there, which did help a little bit with the bite this past week. So overall, very good opportunities. We're going to find out from Dave Manners here in just a little bit about your opportunities along the coast, and there's several of those, but we'll find out what's going on over there as opposed to just the Columbia and the Willamette. Now, I do have Luther on the line with a question. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but there's a lot of options out there other than just chasing spring Chinook. Lots of other options. But if you want to win yourself something free, send Jason at procure.com an email and enter in to win that prize pack that we do each and every week. Thank you, Procure, for making that happen. We appreciate your support of the show, as always. All right, let's go ahead and cut to a quick break. I am a little early, but we don't want to forget Luther's phone call. Luther, looks like you got a question about Hag Lake. What's going on?
I've been out there half a dozen times trying to chase some crappie or bass around, and I was just wondering, I have yet to be successful out there. I have crappie fished before in other states and done quite well. I'm trying the same tactic and have not been very successful at it. So I was wondering if you had any insight on what could be used, or is it too late in the year now, the spawning's done, or what?
It's definitely not too late in the year. The spawn is all determined by temperature, and I would say it's probably over, but that doesn't mean that you can't find them. There's a big population of crappie in Hag Lake. We've actually talked about it several times with Crappie Killer here on the set, but they're hard to find. Are you fishing from the bank, Luther, or are you using a boat to get around? How are you actually covering ground out there?
I have an 18-foot smoker craft sled.
Okay, so you're able to cover ground pretty good then. So the river, or the creek, I say river, the creek mouths, those areas can be very productive for crappie. Again, it's one of those things where you have to find them and be willing to continue to move until you do so. Now, I'm very familiar with Hag Lake. I've fished it for a very long time. The very end of the lake, the opposite end of the dam, that area is much more conducive to bass, crappie, bluegill, and some of the other options that are out there, much like what your question is. That end of the lake is much more conducive to having those species up there. That's where you're going to find most of them. Trout seem to be further down, closer to the dam in that middle part of the lake. And then on the other end is where you're going to find the crappie and bass, at least in the populations or in big numbers. But you got to find them, right? Another bit of advice that you can try, and a lot of times it's a really good source, is Ryan, help me out here, Lakeshore, Lake Stop Grocery. That's the store that when you're coming into Hag Lake on the right-hand side as you get off the freeway there, over there in Forest Grove, if you call that store, they have a lot of reports that they get each day, let alone if it's from trout fishing, but of course for bass and crappie as well. So they're going to be a pretty darn good source on what's going on over there, where the crappie might even be, and at what stage they're actually at, post-spawn most likely, and what they're doing now. So that's a really good source for Hag Lake specifically. But I would definitely spend your time on that opposite end from the dam. I believe it's more of a north end, but those areas are going to hold numbers of crappie and bass. But again, it's one of those things where you got to find them. Creek mouths are where I would start, or back in the arms that you'll find on that lake. But once you find them, then of course, stay on them, don't move, and get as many as you can, obviously. But it's just one of those things. You got to be willing to continue to cover ground to find them, and hopefully you can. There's some monsters in there, and every single time that the state record is beaten, it's beaten in Hag Lake for smallmouth bass in particular. That is where the biggest smallmouth are in this state. Unless something has dramatically changed in the last year, it's been countless numbers of state records come from Hag Lake. There are some toads. And there's largemouth in there, by the way, as well, for those that may not have known that. But Luther, I hope that helps out in some way. All right, we're going to cut to a break. When we come back, I've got a video package for you about Ray Marine. I finally have a chance to talk about the Axiom 2 Pro that I'm running in my sled right now. And I absolutely love this thing for two reasons. One, user-friendly, and the amount of power. You might go, power? What's power mean? It's important. We'll have that when we come back from this break.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by P-Line, because we fish, by Hawken Fishing, perfection in fishing gear, and by Haxton's Canvas and Upholstery, the trusted name of the Pacific Northwest.